In today's episode, guys, we're going to be talking about the psychological challenges of ACL rehab, something which tends to get missed. It tends to be a lot of focus around the physical component, but a large proportion of the challenge in the rehab process for ACLs is actually the psychological component and the mindset needed to overcome a significant injury like it. You naturally have lots of challenges around, dealing with setbacks, dealing with the challenges, and unless you're prepared for all those, it can be a very difficult process. You've got to be prepared for some of these challenges coming up, and I'm also going to share some strategies to overcome them as well. So, one of the biggest challenges early on is this fear and anxiety that comes from, firstly, the risk of re-injury, and then secondly, the anxiety of not being able to do what you love and the kind of lack of certainty around when you're going to be able to get back. So, with regards to the fear of re-injury, there's a lot of research around the fact that if you aren't essentially prepared to go back, if you're still doubting your ability to go back, if you still have fear of re-injury, then you're going to be in a much higher likelihood of hurting yourself when you do eventually go back. There's a few reasons for this, but primarily it's because you're probably going to go in with that doubt. You're not going to be committing quite as much to the actions that you wanted to, or you need to be able to do in your sport, for example. Maybe the thing that caused the injury is what you're trying to stop yourself doing. So when it comes around, you're not prepared for it because you haven't actually exposed yourself to the exact thing that caused the injury in the first place. So a very important component of the rehab process is making sure that as you're going through, you're exposing yourself to the things that caused the injury in the first place, so you can have absolute confidence and conviction that your body is ready to go back. So that's a very important thing. First of all, is making sure you're addressing this fear that can come from naturally the fear that can come from this process. Anxiety really is driven by a few factors, but primarily it can be the fact that you're not able to do your sport anymore, you're not able to do the activities that you love anymore, you don't really have any certainty of when you're going to be going back, you perhaps haven't been given any kind of clear plan of what to do, so you feel a little bit left to your own devices, not really sure what you should be doing, what targets to aim for. You don't really know what the numbers you should be aiming for, what assessments you should be doing, all that type of thing. It gives a lot of anxiety by design because you just don't know what it is you should be doing next. So that's why this tends to be quite a bit of anxiety around this process. Secondly, then you get this frustration and impatience as you're going along because you probably feel just so frustrated that you can't get back faster. It's natural to have this impatience that you want to be able to get back to things you love quicker, but you've got to take things steadily. You've got to do things the right way. If you rush the process or you don't do the rehab process effectively, we know from research again that you can massively increase the risk of re-injury if you don't do it properly. So making sure that you're not rushing it is hugely important. But human nature means we get impatient about the speed of results. Like we want the result now and we want instant gratification. Unfortunately, you have to have that realism that to do the rehab process properly, it takes time. You've got to do things in the right way and you can't rush it. If you rush it, you won't do it properly. If you don't do it properly, you risk hurting yourself again and being all the way back to square one, which is the absolute worst case scenario. So we really don't want to rush this process. From a frustration perspective, lots of frustrations that can come along, but really it's the kind of the speed of progress. It can be the lack of ability to be active. You might have lost your independence early on if you're on crutches after surgery or early on in the injury process. Perhaps you've got other people driving you around or other people you're relying on to get out and about. That's going to be frustrating. Seeing your teammates out training and not being able to compete, that's also frustrating. So there's a lot of frustration that is tied up in this process as well. And a big factor again is this loss of identity. You might feel like a part of your identity is tied up in being an athlete, being competitive, being in a team, being a teammate. All that type of thing is a big part of what maybe makes up your identity. And when that gets taken away, it's a very, very difficult thing to kind of handle. Again, we know from research that one of the biggest challenges with regards to retiring from sport is this idea of unplanned retirement through injury. And there's a big psychological difference between athletes who are prepared for retirement because they're going in knowing that's going to happen. They're prepared for it, from a logistical perspective, financially, they've developed some skills. They can move into another job once they do retire. And then you've got a group of athletes who get injured and have to retire, which is obviously very, very sad. And they're not prepared for what happens next. There's a huge identity shift that happens quickly, and there hasn't been a gradual process of being ready for what happens next. And that's why a loss of identity can be so significant for someone who has just hurt themselves, just had their ACL tear. Now, here are some strategies. Okay, that's all the kind of challenges you might face. You obviously want to hear some positives, some things you can actually implement and put in place to improve your situation. The first one is about realistic goals. A huge part of the rehab process is about momentum, it's about motivation, it's about habits, it's about beliefs. And if we can get these goals set in place early on, then you're going to keep the momentum moving forwards. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to keep yourself moving forwards quite as effectively. Now, there's a few components to this. Realistic means within the time frame you've got, is the goal that you're working towards an achievable outcome. A big part of ACL rehab is ensuring you've not just got time-based rehab goals, but you've also got criteria-based goals as well. So, rather than just at 3 months, I'm going to return to running, it should be when I've passed these criteria and these tests and I've got these scores, then I know I'm able to move on to the next phase. That's why having realistic goals is so important. And what this does is it keeps momentum moving forward, it keeps you motivated, keeps you excited about the next step, and breaks down what is quite a lengthy process into smaller, more tangible goals. So you might break down typically a 9 to 12 month process, you might break that down into months, then weeks, then days. So you've got a daily goal, you've then got a weekly goal, you've got a monthly goal, you've got the phase goal of that 3 month period, for example. And so that keeps you always moving forwards towards a smaller goal. Now, to give you some tangible examples of this, early on in phase 1, it might be trying to achieve full knee extension, get quad activation, again, in the early stages, and knee flexion. So trying to get range of motion and activation, essentially. How can we break that down even further, where it could be to try to give a specific increase in extension degrees? So you're obviously trying to aim to get 0, ideally hyperextension and knee extension. Well, maybe you can get to slightly more than before, maybe 3 to 5 degrees more than the couple of weeks beforehand, and you're working towards this longer term goal of full knee extension. Could it be that you have a daily goal to get on the complex, get on the knee extension, quad set exercises? Could it be that you're doing hamstring activation exercises, heel slides, active band exercises, that type of thing on a daily basis to keep yourself moving forward? Could you, for example, focus on a nutritional goal to supplement this? One of the big ones early on that we're trying to focus on in phase 1 is going to be the anti-inflammatory component, because you're having a lot of inflammation in the knee. So trying to focus on anti-inflammatory foods is a very important part of this process as well. So there's a few other ways we can kind of keep yourself moving forwards with shorter term goals to work towards, not just the long term goal of getting back to your sport. So that'd be phase 1. Maybe as you move through towards return to running, you start to set yourself a goal of, I'm going to do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off of linear running. That's my first goal. The second goal is then going to be up to a minute. Third goal is then going to be 30 seconds of some multi-directional running, then up to a minute, and you can build and layer things on like that. Then moving through to phase 3, you might be looking to add in some sport-specific components. You might have a more challenging strength target you're working towards. On a daily basis, you might be looking at how can I improve my nutritional component at that stage, looking at how do I ensure I'm getting adequate protein, starting to fuel myself effectively for return to sport with carbohydrates and getting a sufficient fuel on board, enough macronutrients, that type of thing. So making sure you've got phase-specific goals will also make this much more motivating for you. And those goals have got to be personal to you. You've got to be things that make sense to you based on where you're at currently, and they've got to motivate you. They've got to excite you. You can't just be, what everyone else is working towards. Yes, you're going to have phase-specific goals that you're working towards, but you've also got to have ones that make sense to you, that are genuinely exciting. And something I always do with clients is get them to list out not just the goal, but the reward for getting to that goal as well. It should be a healthy reward for achieving that goal. It might be a very difficult process you've gone through to get to that outcome. How can you reward yourself for that? How can you reinforce that positive loop so that when you do get there, you get positive reinforcement for achieving that goal as well? Whether that's doing something in relation to that goal. It could be once you've achieved full knee extension and quad activation, and you're able to get out and about, start walking again more, you're going to go on your favorite walk with your friends or something like that. So you've got this really positive, tangible goal that's aligned with the outcome of that phase as well. Secondly, focus on the present, not just the future. Try and think about what's happening now. How can I keep myself moving forwards on a day-to-day basis? And also, don't be afraid to look backwards as well and think about how far have I come so far. So it's not just about focused on how far am I from the goal, but it could be, 3 months ago I wasn't able to walk. Now I'm walking, and I'm starting to gradually introduce basic running. All those kind of things make a huge, huge difference when it comes to keeping yourself motivated. But focus on the present means, what am I doing day to day that's going to keep me motivated and keep me moving forward day to day, and not get too caught up in the longer term goal that you're working towards, because it can be quite daunting when you feel like you're a long way from that. But day to day, are you making steps forward? Are you constantly reinforcing the habits of doing the work, moving yourself forward every single day? That's the real key. Support network, hugely important. If you haven't got a support network around you, it makes life much, much more difficult. It's why with my clients, we have a client group who we have to reinforce positive actions and encourage each other and motivate each other and share wins with each other. That makes a big, big difference. Your support network is obviously individual to you, but family and friends and partners and anyone who is close to you who you can lean into. You might have a support coach, you might have a physio, you might have an S&C coach, whoever you might be working with. All of those are examples of a supportive network which helps you to not only feel connected with other people, but also to kind of lean into their support, so you have a supportive infrastructure around you, as opposed to feeling isolated in this instance. This is particularly important if you're a team sports player and you're used to being around other people. Suddenly, if you're by yourself and you're not able to do anything team focused, find a way to get people around you. That might be something as simple as going to training and just being, even though you might be on the sidelines, being involved in the practices somehow, just being around the environment. So you have that network you're still connected with, as opposed to completely isolating yourself from the team. That could be one way of doing it. Staying engaged and active, again, active depends on the level of function you've got at the moment, obviously. So do things safely and don't do anything that's going to be risky. But being engaged in the process, keeping yourself active in some capacity is going to be very, very important. What else could you be doing in each phase is always a question I ask my clients. So what other things could you be doing alongside, early stage rehab? Could you also be doing, upper body work, upper body conditioning? Once you get onto the bike, you do lots of bike conditioning. Can you do, a low level sport you haven't tried before? Could you get out and about and start walking? Whatever that is, keep yourself active and engaged. Again, it just helps with motivation fundamentally. And then finally, it's all about cultivating a positive mindset. And that can come through a variety of different means, but primarily it's about, how can I focus on moving forwards, achieving goals, working towards those goals, reinforcing the achievement of those goals through positive reward, and staying connected with other people and sharing my journey with other people as well. All of those things are massively powerful for cultivating this positive mindset moving forwards, as opposed to feeling isolated, disengaged, unmotivated, without a clear plan. And the reason why in the program that I run and I put this all together for you is, we include a clear plan moving forwards with tangible criteria to work towards, phase specific goals, the supportive community and connections of the people, support from myself and my team, the additional resources around nutrition, mindset, training, lifestyle. All of that together makes a big, big difference when it comes to your success in a long-term rehab process. So I hope that's helped. That's given you some tangible goals to work towards, some tangible things that can help you in the rehab process. And although this is a difficult and challenging process, the more you can kind of lean into some of these things, the more effective it will be, and the better your chance of success in your ACL rehab process.